Hello, everyone. Test, test. Is the mic working? Maybe? All right. Senator, can you hear me?
Yes, Kyle, I can hear you. Good morning.
All right. Good morning, Senator. Thank you so much for being here. I know logistics have been a challenge, but we really appreciate it. It's awesome to have you with us. Thank you again.
Well, it's wonderful to be there with you, Kyle. And listen, thanks for what you've done to help bring the industry forward. And thank goodness we're in a place now where we can see the industry thrive going forward here in America.
Awesome. For context, Senator Hagerty, we're in a room in New York right now. We got about 400 people or so here, investors from all over the world, entrepreneurs. Everyone's super excited to dive in today. Cool. I will get into our Q&A. It's been an honor getting to know you over the last year. Your introduction to crypto is actually something that I think a lot of our LPs would enjoy hearing about. In some ways, it's typical, but your reaction has been anything but. Could you talk a little bit about that and why you came to care about the industry and technology generally?
Yeah, Kyle, it's probably not that different from many of my colleagues. My first introduction to crypto was not in a good way. As many of you know, before going to the Senate, I served as the United States ambassador to Japan. It's the third largest country in the world. We have a significant military posture there. In fact, more military than any place else in the world, more U.S. military stationed in Japan. It's a very bad neighborhood. You've got China, Russia, and yes, North Korea right at your doorstep. We were working very hard to impose maximum pressure sanctions on North Korea at that time. I'm out there in 2017. North Korea had been dramatically acting up. And we were imposing sanctions trying to stop even ship-to-ship transfers of coal where they might get $3, $6, $7 million, blocking North Korean workers from going into other countries. All of this trying to deprive this regime of the wherewithal that they needed to advance their nuclear program and keep South Korea under threat. And one day I walk in my office, and above the fold, there's a message, headline, that a wallet shop in Tokyo called CoinCheck had been hacked for what was the equivalent of north of $500 million in one night. I brought my team in, asked them if they were following this. They said, sir, we don't have the necessary, I'm gonna use the wrong term, malware to analyze it. It took me an hour to get it. By the time our teams analyzed it very quickly, they said it's a state actor. In all likelihood, it would have been Iran, North Korea, China, or Russia. Over $500 million enriching a country or an entity that was more likely than not advancing their interest against ours, particularly in that region. It was greatly concerning. It turns out that in Tokyo, they were trying to be very embracing to the evolving industry. That of the 39 wallet shops that were operating, 19 of them were operating as pending while their applications were pending. Of course, the one that got ripped off was one of those shops. I got all the pending applications shut down. We went to work really trying to understand what had happened, what could happen. In fact, it really began my journey understanding the potential of this technology. Instead of it being a tool for crime and something that we should be worried about, you start thinking about how cash is used. This is certainly better than cash in many ways, and with the proper authorities can be traced. But more importantly, I started understanding what could be done with the blockchain technology. Being a business person my entire life, the efficiencies that could be brought to bear, the fact that this could take us into the next wave of competitiveness, I really began to dig in and realize this is something that we should embrace. This is something that in our economy, it could take us to the next level. In Japan, they have massive demographic problems. Technologies like this can improve productivity dramatically, dealing with these sort of demographics in a new way via technology. At the time, the Japanese were focused on robotics, quantum computing, but this is an area where we can move much more rapidly. Interestingly, the innovation, the ingenuity is taking place largely in America. We need to create an environment where this can actually thrive, prosper, and grow. And I've been spending time with you, Kyle, with a number of your colleagues in the industry, understanding it better. I also serve on the banking committee, where I've been trying to push back on the regime that's taking place here in Washington that wants to make everything a centralized solution that the government can control. That would be devastating to this industry. What makes it appealing is the fact that it is decentralized. Innovation can take place. It can be verified. It's something that I think is uniquely American for those of us that love liberty and freedom. So this is something that has really become a rallying call for me, understanding the technology, seeing the applications, making certain that we do our best to avoid any misuse of the technology, but at the same time, making sure that leadership with this technology is resident here in the United States, and we don't have a regulatory framework that is so convoluted or utilizes, bizarre practices like regulation to enforcement, that we create so much uncertainty that the industry moves offshore. It's interesting, during the 2024 presidential election, you even had Kamala Harris, whose entire party had been so anti cryptocurrency, anti-Bitcoin technology, speak up and say, well, maybe perhaps there should be some certainty here. A little too late, I think, given the aggressive actions that all the regulators in the Biden-Harris administration had been taking. Their actions spoke louder than words. Now we have a regime come in with President Trump that really understands the potential for innovation, that wants to see the American economy grow, and wants to place America's interests first on the worldwide stage. And technology like this is absolutely one of those that can make America right at the forefront of leading technologies, at the forefront of what will make our economy more productive than any. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you here to make certain that the environment here, the regulatory environment, the legal environment here, is supportive and conducive to further investment and further growth in this arena. And I think the marketplace, frankly, if you look at valuations post the election, is reflecting that sort of optimism as well.
Senator, thank you so much for taking a nuanced view on crypto. As you well know, a lot of your colleagues in the Senate have not developed quite as nuanced of a view as you have, but just kind of stopped at first understanding and never dove deeper. So we really appreciate that. Second thing would love to jump into, let's get to the campaign. Why do you think crypto became an issue for this campaign? Why do you, President Trump, and Vice President-elect Vance view it as important for the U.S. in general?
It was very obvious to many people in your industry that by being engaged, you actually could have an impact on the outcome. If you think about the chair of the Senate Banking Committee, Sherrod Brown, would never bring any legislation to the floor that was in the least bit friendly to the crypto industry. In fact, everything that came was moving the other way. No oversight on the overreach of the Securities and Exchange Commission, for example, refusing to hold the SEC and Gary Gensler accountable. And frankly, Elizabeth Warren on the committee, really taking a very negative posture toward anything having to do with the industry. It looked clear to me that their desire was to kill it. Look no further than their candidate for the comptroller of the currency, Ms. Omarova. What she wanted to see was a centralized digital currency managed by the central government, putting banks out of business, putting all of you out of business, and taking control. And if you think about the implications on American liberty and freedom, when you have a government that can surveil, a government that could, for example, cut off your gasoline purchases if they decided that you were driving too far, a government that could prevent you from purchasing something that they thought, was somehow socially unacceptable. That is not the America that we live in. That is the type of control that the regime that was in charge wanted to see. It's time for them to hit the hills. And with the help of this industry, we've made that so.
Staying on the election a little bit, could you talk a little bit about the work that the Sentinel Action Fund did in helping to elect the pro-crypto Senate, and why controlling the Senate was such an important outcome for Sentinel?
Certainly, Kyle, and thank you for your help and leadership in terms of educating this community about the work that Sentinel Action Fund was doing. Sentinel Action Fund was really born from my work back in 2022. At that time, I canvassed the United States the final 10 days. I campaigned in 7 states with my hopefully future colleagues. And I was looking at their data as I was campaigning with them. Most of them were ahead in the polls. And I felt very certain that we would probably be at 53, 54 U.S. senators on the Republican side at the end of that election. Instead, where did we land? 49. What had happened? Well, back in 2020, many of the rules for elections on a state-by-state basis had been changed in the midst of the pandemic. We didn't like those changes. Many of them were beyond the law. State legislators are the ones that have the tools to change the rules. Many rules were changed by others. But by 2022, these rules have been legislated. I may not like it, but Pennsylvania went to 50 days of early voting. You can ballot harvest depending on the county. It's a complicated process, but it's one that the Democrats had figured out and we had not. In the 2022 election, for example, John Fetterman's team had collected over 700,000 more early votes than Mehmet Oz. Even though Oz won on election day, won by 400,000 votes, that mountain of early votes, early ballots that had been collected the week before the debate, or by the debate, there was a week between the debate and the election, that mountain of ballots was not overcomable. Even though during the course of that ensuing week,
most Googled question in Pennsylvania was, how do I change my vote after the debate was seen by Pennsylvania voters? It's not possible to change your vote once you've submitted it. So, John Fetterman was put into office, even though he was soundly beat on election day, because they had played the game that they had designed, and Republicans were not up to it. That didn't happen this time. We were on the ground in Pennsylvania. We were on the ground in Ohio, Sherrod Brown's home state. We were on the ground in Montana. In every state that we were on the ground where President Trump won, we also won the Senate. Where we weren't on the ground, we were not able to win the Senate. It tells you something. We started just a very minor campaign in Nevada late. We were promised by a donor $5 million. Only 1.2 million came through, so I had to. So the team, not me, but the team, had to cut the focus down to just Clark County, Las Vegas. Had we the full $5 million, Sam Brown would also be serving in the United States Senate right now. It absolutely worked. We brought people in that are known as low proclivity voters. These are registered Republicans who have voted 0, 1, or 2 out of the last 4 elections. And by being low proclivity, it means it takes more work to get them to come. But once they have voted, we didn't spend another nickel getting them to come to the polls. But we literally sent door knockers. We texted them. We emailed them. We sent paper flyers. As many as 30 touches to get a person that has not voted in the past 4 elections to vote. And guess what? In Pennsylvania, 17% of the voters were people that had voted 0 times in the last 4 elections. And with Dave McCormick holding on by about a 25,000 vote lead right now, you can tell that was material. President Trump, again, winning very tight margins. That was material, both the presidential and the senatorial races.
All right, shifting gears to kind of administrative stuff. How should we think about the repeal of the Chevron doctrine a few months ago? Specifically, what are the specific areas in which President Trump can make direct changes without Congress? And what are some new things that Congress can do in a post-Chevron era?
The Chevron doctrine, for our listeners, was a landmark case that ruled judges should defer to unelected bureaucrats when they make regulations. The idea being that the bureaucrats knew best and should be entitled to deference. That no longer is the case, thanks to that case being overturned, which puts more responsibility back on us as legislators, Kyle, if you think about it. We need to be much more clear and prescriptive as we put legislation forward. In my mind, that means much more closely working with industries like yours so that we fully understand the second and third order effects of legislation that we're proposing, rather than just handing it over to a group of unelected bureaucrats and hoping they'll figure it out. What we found is these bureaucrats are extraordinarily partisan. They have their own views. And frankly, many bureaucrats, and this is a bipartisan criticism, they just feel that they will outlast the political leadership that is in place in their agency. And they tend not to listen to political leadership that responds to the public, whether they be Republican or Democrat. That has to change. This is our opportunity to do it. And I think President Trump is going to seize on this opportunity and come back with a significant regulatory review. The American public have spoken loud and clear. They didn't elect these bureaucrats. They elected us. And the time has come for us to take full responsibility and bring the bureaucratic regime into order. It is, again, completely out of control. If you look at some of the misbehavior that's taken place inside of the DOJ, the FBI, some of these law enforcement agencies, these people aren't necessarily political appointees, but they are not upholding the law. They are doing things that I think American people are shocked that they're doing. And I think many of the people in the agencies are going to be relieved now that they see that there actually is going to be accountability. And probably a number of them will leave, not wanting to be held to account. So it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, I think, to clean up these agencies, again, making them more responsive to the American public that elected the political leadership on the top.
Senator, prior to the election, your office socialized a draft of some stablecoin legislation. I opened our summit this morning talking about stablecoins and believe it's going to be a core unlock for traditional finance and for crypto. Could you share what some of your priorities are in the administration's as it pertains to stablecoins?
I think stablecoins is a very logical next step for us. The legislation that we've put out in draft form has been very positively received, Kyle. And I would think, as early as January, we will have a great deal of momentum working on pieces of legislation like mine and others that will bring certainty to the marketplace, frankly, by issuing a decentralized US dollar denomination, not by issuing, but by creating the regulatory framework so that they can be issued. Decentralized US dollar denominated stablecoins will have a massive effect in terms of making the dollar and enhancing the role of the dollar as the reserve currency in the world. It will have a positive impact on treasury markets. There's nothing not to like about this. I think the only reason we've had resistance is because the Democrats don't like the fact that they are not centralized. That's the big hanging point for them. That's precisely why I think so many people in this audience and so many Americans love the decentralized nature of it, again, because they don't want the government in a position to tamper with their lives, control their purchases.
Senator, we know that President Trump has been committed to a government that's more open to crypto and that's going to streamline regulations not only in crypto, but across the economy as a whole in all kinds of different sectors. What should we expect from the economy as a whole in 25 and 26?
What I think you'll see, Kyle, is a great deal more capital investment. There's been a good deal of uncertainty coming into this year, and I think a lot of money has been sitting on the sidelines. A lot of corporate decisions have been paused, waiting to see what type of leadership will be in place in Washington. With President Trump, American business knows that you've got a business leader that's going to be pro-growth, pro-employee, and one that is going to facilitate capital investment rather than constrain it. If you think about what the Biden administration did from day one, they immediately attacked one of the most critical geostrategic levers that we have in our economy. That's our ability to produce energy. So the flatlining of U.S. oil and gas production, fracking, inability to permit, the first thing they do is kill the Keystone XL pipeline, and then they okay the Nord Stream 2 that we in Congress had on a bipartisan basis halted. It's just beyond comprehension that they are facilitating the production of places like Russia, Iran, Venezuela, while they're constraining the growth potential here in America. That growth potential is going to come back through the roof. You look at the appointments that President Trump is considering in Burgum and Wright, you're going to see America back on top with respect to energy production. What that does, an immediate effect on inflation here in America. The secondary effect is it makes us a much stronger and more desirable ally because President Trump is going to lift the ban on LNG exports. The European Union, I'll call this the Trump effect, Kyle. The European Union has already said they should be considering the replacement of Russian LNG with U.S. LNG. Interestingly, the Qataris have now kicked Hamas leadership out. This didn't happen until after the election. You've got Britain now saying that they should step up their defense expenditures to 2.5% of GDP. Again, this didn't happen until after the election. Around the world, we're seeing leaders, before President Trump even takes office, move in a direction that's much more favorable to being better allies with us, being more integrated with us, and leveraging our economic strength, whether it be in energy, whether it be in stronger capital markets. The notion that we would allow the Europeans to establish through the Basel in-game process, to allow them to establish the regulations on our banking system is absolutely absurd. This effort that Michael Barr, who's the vice chair of the Fed, has been undertaking is bankrupt in my view. He never got there, and by not allowing him to basically take us down to the level of Europe, we have another chance to think about our financial system as a true source of competitive advantage and build it up, make it stronger, and make the depth of our capital markets, the access to our capital markets, a huge source of competitive advantage, and by the way, a means to deter bad behavior at the same time.
Senator, changing gears, there's a lot of talk about Elon and Vivek and the new Doge initiative. Do you have any insights or thoughts on what kind of cool stuff they can do that perhaps most people are not thinking about?
I was just talking with Elon yesterday about one aspect of this with respect to Treasury disbursements, which are massive. And Elon's thought was that the mechanism, the mechanical mechanisms, the code, everything that has to do with those disbursements is quite outdated. Just updating that code to find out if there are any misdisbursements could yield significant savings. Sounds like a minor thing, but given the size and scale of the payments, it could yield major savings. Just think about what sounds like a minor tweak like that, given the size of the disbursements, could yield tremendous benefit. So I think they're thinking through a litany of ideas, low-hanging fruit, like I just described, others that are considerable and significant. But I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing a tremendous amount of bureaucratic overhead identified and peeled off. And I think we've got a number of people in the government that would be more than happy to point out these sorts of abuses. The reward system now is going to be quite different than it was in the past administration for identifying this and helping solve it. I'm very optimistic about what may come here.
Thank you. President Trump has, of course, committed to a Bitcoin strategic reserve, working with Senator Lummis of Wyoming on some of that stuff. Do you think we're going to see legislation for the U.S. to open market buy Bitcoin, or will this just be cessation of criminal seizures?
It's hard for me to say at this point. I've talked with both President Trump and Senator Lummis about this, and I'm not certain exactly where it will land, Kyle, but I know there's a great deal of interest and work going on trying to assess the best way to move forward there.
Great. Well, Senator, we know you're incredibly busy. You got a lot going on. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. Good luck with everything going on, part of the transition. And thank you again for being here.
Great being here. Thank you. And thank you for your support in this election. It made all the difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Bye-bye.